Okay. Back with another day of work. Um, Not going to take the time to draw today just because I've fallen pretty far behind on getting this done. I just went through the interview process for a job, so I anticipate if I get that job, I'm not going to have as much time to work on this, so I'm anxious to get through what I have here.
You don't know what the ages are?
So I'm currently in chapter 12. Uh, the second part of the book has um, was from chapter 8 to chapter 17. So effectively 10 chapters, I think. So I'm just going through these. I usually keep my file list on the other window. Go through these one by one. Um, and I'm not piecing the chapter together yet. I'm doing the initial cleanup, so my technique is pretty much the same on every file. I'm gonna normalize the loudness, and the parameters I use are just the ACX parameters, the Amazon um, audiobook parameters. That's what I use to normalize and then limit the volume of the clips. And then I'm going to go through. Um, Sometimes, if I make a mistake and I accidentally silence a part that I shouldn't, I will listen to the clip section by section as I'm working on it. But right now, it's been very redundant. And so I feel like I have a good idea of what needs to be done. So I just go through, I select the long, quiet parts and silence them in. Oh, my eye is really itchy. I suppose you don't need to know that, but you're watching it. If you're watching this in Audacity, that is under generate silence. So basically, I believe what the program is doing is you select a section and then you say generate silence. It's going to generate a piece of silence that's the exact length of what you have selected and then paste it over the top. And this causes the program to
So,
have.
what makes an age? Someone created this age? What does that mean?
Um, Sometimes you'll run into memory issues. So then when I listen to it, what I'm listening for is any kind of popping or anything like that when the sound comes in, or sometimes I'll silence too much, and like at the end of a word that maybe ends with a T sound, you might see like something like this. I guess inverted, but it looks like it's all silence, and so it's one of my alarms. Um, you'll see something like this, and there'll be just like this tiny little uh, pop in it. That's actually where the T sound is coming in. So if I accidentally silence over the top of that, then it'll sound strange coming through because you won't hear the T at the end of the word.
So, what makes an.
And then I try to do fade ins and fade outs and fade ins on either side of the silence to remove the pops. So I just listen to it real quick because right now, immediately after editing it, that's when I have an opportunity to. That's. Sorry, I'm just really bad at doing two things at once. Right after I edit it, well, it's still loaded up. That's the only opportunity that I have to undo what I've done. Um, so, like, if I accidentally did cut off a part of a word and I need to redo that section so that I can reclaim that T, right now is the only time I have to do it. When I save and close the file, when I reopen it, I won't be able to, at least to my knowledge, I won't be able to undo at that point. I won't be able to get that sound back. So a lot of times what that will mean is that I would have to re-record that section if it was very bad.
Yes?
Or it kind of introduces this choice where either I have to re-record it because it's really bad, or I have to just accept the really bad version and try to move forward with that. You know, I don't think either option is really a good option, but I think obviously re-recording it is the better option in that circumstance. Okay, and then as much as I would love to keep everything on the screen, I feel like there's a certain level of zoom where working with the audio is just a lot easier to do. So I zoom in even though it's a little inconvenient to have to scroll. And then depending on what keyboard I'm working with, moving around may or may not be simple. So I'm pretty sure anybody who's watching this already knows, but just in case, my favorite keyboard layout is the 96% layout. And what the 96% layout does is it takes the nav cluster, which would be the name of the part of your keyboard where the arrow keys are, and then there's also the insert, home, end, print screen, pause, break, scroll lock, page up, page down, all of those buttons. And I think another one or two. Those are all in the nav cluster. So what a 96% keyboard does is it takes all of that and it does away with it to an extent. I think ideally in a 96% keyboard, you will still have all of those buttons, although I don't mind losing page up, page down. I rarely use those buttons. This one has them right here. This one has insert as well. Here's the print screen button. Print screen button I think is very useful. We got home and end and delete. I like the delete key, although that's one you can also get rid of. So, and then it will smash the arrow keys kind of into the rest of the keyboard. So the normal alphanumeric section of the keyboard, it leaves that alone basically. It just shortens some of these keys to make room for the arrow keys. And then the number pad as well, it generally leaves those alone. A lot of the better 96% layouts will add a row of buttons up in the F row area. This one adds 3 plus a knob. So this is the layout that I like the most. My feeling is that a full-size keyboard is a little bit too wide. Now I'm a pretty wide person to begin with, but when I say too wide, what I mean is when you have one hand on your keyboard typically, and then one hand on your mouse. So what I'm looking for, I guess my camera angles, not really, but I want my hands to be under my shoulders. So for me, that's a 96% layout. That kind of perfectly puts my hands under my shoulders. I've done some smaller layouts as well. Sorry. I used to swear by a 60% layout, which is, well, actually, I think this is different than a 60%, because a 60% normally wouldn't even have an F row on it. I still really like the F row in whatever layout I'm using, but a really small layout like this. But what I found using this layout is there was a lot of dead space in the middle, and there was plenty of room for a number pad. So that layout is okay unless you like to use, unless you like to use the number pad, which I do.
You must know you could see these things at any time you wanted. I mean, the Sinzakish King visits whenever it suits him. I'm sure the Jaltakish King could too.
Now, the thing with the 96% layout, though, is that different people do it, or different manufacturers, I guess, do it differently. They will prioritize different things. So some 96% theories are like everything in the nav cluster can be gotten rid of. Like there's nothing there that you need at all. So whatever space you have in your 96% layout, you can use for, whatever. And I mean, I kind of like that in a sense.
Who wrote this?
Because it leads to some level of innovation, like the one that I'm using right at the moment. So this one, it doesn't have a home key, but it does have an end key. It doesn't have a print screen key, although I've reprogrammed it to have that. And then up here where it could have extra buttons, where it could have moved some of the nav buttons up, it doesn't. Instead, there's a dedicated button for opening the calculator. And then there's this little screen and also a knob. Now, the little screen was kind of like, it was interesting when it worked. It doesn't work anymore. It hasn't for some time. But it was basically like your caps lock, light and stuff like that. And then it had a little cat on it, I guess. The cat wasn't really a selling point for me, but maybe it would be for other people. But although I don't like losing the keys that are lost on this keyboard, what I do like about this keyboard is I really like the color scheme. It's got a brass plate in it. I like many of the things about that. And then even though this is a silent keyboard, I actually really like the way that it feels to type on it, which is rare for me on a quiet keyboard. Most of them feel very, very mushy, and I don't enjoy typing on them. This one does not feel mushy. They went toward being tactile, and although it's not as tactile as a clicky keyboard can be, it does have a fair amount of feedback when you press a key.
I would be on.
So this is weird. Wood ends really strangely.
I would be.
And then there's like this silence here. I don't really think there's anything you can hear in the silence, but I'm going to go ahead and wipe it out anyway. But I'm worried because the wood sounds so strange to begin with. I'm worried that I've made it worse.
I would be honored to stay, sire.
I think it's okay. It's okay. I don't think I fundamentally changed what the words sounded like. This is another thing that I encounter while I'm editing my audio work is, did I save that? Okay. Sometimes I feel like I could have done a better job. Sometimes I want to redo it. And sometimes I will redo it. There is a danger to redoing it, though. What I've discovered is that your voice changes. So my voice today is going to sound probably a little different than my voice did when I recorded this. So matching those things up can be really difficult. Or even, I don't know, I felt like sometimes just impossible to match it up. So sometimes, even though I might feel like re-recording the section is ultimately going to create a better product, in practice, when I try to re-record the section, I just can't get it to match up. I can't get it to sound right. And so then in reality, it sounds worse. So I'll end up sticking with the original anyway.
It's Tiala I'll serve one day. It wouldn't be very wise for me to deny her demands.
So there's a little bit of a balancing act there. I have to, sort of try to gauge in the blind whether or not I'm going to be able to replicate a close enough sound if I really do feel like it needs to be redone. And then anytime I'm engaged in redoing a section, there's a huge risk that I'm just going to be wasting a bunch of time. Maybe taking a bunch of time and spending it on re-recording it, and then with no benefit.
The kingdom. No.
Okay. And then sometimes, like, I don't even hear things that are going on. I don't know if you caught it while you were listening, but in one of the audio clips where I was doing the voicing for Messith, there was a lot of... Sorry, I know that's an unpleasant sound. There was a lot of that going on while I was talking. I don't know how to get rid of that. So I'll get rid of it in the silent parts. But in the parts where I have the character speaking, if you can hear that, I don't know how to solve that. So it just kind of remains in. And I mean, those are the kind of things that I would think, okay, I should re-record this.
You've got to be mindful of what will benefit the kingdom, not the king. Tiala needs some toughness to face what's ahead, and I'm happy to help how I can. Besides,
And then when I first started working on this project, as I've stated a few times in the past, like, I'm not an audio editor. I'm not really familiar with editing audio. I'm certainly not a professional. So I'm just kind of making up rules for myself as I go along. So my initial approach was that
I don't think King Salonum is as unaware of his daughter's dealings as she imagines he is.
my initial approach was that I would give it a listen, and then I would only edit it if I heard something, like if I heard a breath or some lip smacking or anything like that. If I heard that, then I would edit it. And then what I found was when I was listening, or somebody else was listening to the final product, all the audio pieced together, what would happen is I would hear things that were not edited out that I wish had been, whether it be a breath or, like some of the mouth noises, or even something in the background where I would think, okay, I mean, that really should have been...
He said, and patted Messith on the head.
That really should have been re-recorded or edited out, but now it's just in there, and it would be, somewhat difficult to correct. Like, it's easy to correct right now when I'm just working with a bunch of audio clips. Once I start piecing everything together, then if I have to correct an individual audio clip, I'm going to run into a circumstance where like say I had to re-record it, then the re-recorded version might have a different cadence and a different duration than what I used. And so it may affect the final, edit of how everything is pieced together. He winked. And then that might mean, that I have to edit the larger file. I have to make major changes to the larger file, which may be easy to do in Audacity. I'm not sure. Like the way that I'm doing it certainly isn't easy. It's actually quite difficult to like select all of the audio clips past a certain point. So it just introduces more work and more complexity. So I think from my perspective, ideally, I would be catching all of the problems at this point in the production, getting them fixed, and getting this file ready to be pieced together into the final edit. So part of what that means for this process is just that this is really dull and tedious. Like, this is very repetitive work. Find the blank spot, silence it, fade on either side. Very dull, boring, tedious work. And I find myself like falling asleep a lot while I'm doing it. But it still requires enough focus that it's not exactly easy to do like what I'm doing right now. Like work on the audio and talk at the same time can be difficult to form thoughts, for my old brain. And I really am going to argue that there is a difference because of age. I don't know how many people think like me, but when I was younger, I knew a lot of older people who accomplished very exceptional things. And so when they would talk about how age made it more difficult for them to achieve their goal, I would think, that's fine. I'll give them their due that they're asking for, but I don't really think age has that much of an impact. And now, decades later, I would have to say my perspective has shifted. And I guess, I guess to a cynic, it shifted in the most sensible way. It shifted to whatever was most beneficial for me in the moment, right? So now that I'm older, my perspective shifted to be more empathetic to being older and to say that something I never thought was a thing is actually a thing, now that I can claim it for myself. And, I think the cynical mindset is a good thing sometimes, to call yourself out on your self-aggrandizement. I think as a general rule, that is a worthy practice, to seek the opportunity to mentally chastise yourself for being too proud of yourself. The two girls talked endlessly, asking question after question about each other's lives. Tiala confessed a fascination with magic, though she shied away from actually learning to control it. Her curiosity about Dour Gujest was refreshingly unaccusing. For her part, Messeth wondered about the Jaltakish themselves. It was an entire kingdom closed off to her, and she wanted to know all she could about how it worked. Wait, right Messeth there. Couldn't stop. Do you see that? So I was kind of keyed into this one. I wanted to silence this, but as you can hear, this is the D sound and work. About how it worked. Messeth couldn't stop thinking about the ancient book Tiala and Orinth mentioned sometimes. Eventually, she had to bring it up again in conversation. Tiala had been talking about how beautiful she imagined the spires at the heart of Dour Gujest must be, when Messeth, too distracted by her inner monologue of questions to really listen, interrupted. So that worked out. So this chapter has been difficult for me to sit down and work on. This has been a struggle for me, and I want to put it in a context because I have an idea of something I want to say about it. Um, Throughout most of my life, I've been frustrated with the standard job structure of you come into work, you work for 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours, and then you leave. And certainly there is a lot of negative and a lot of downside to this structure. I think in some part it encourages people to perform to a lower standard.
Tiala stopped mid-sentence and turned to Messeth.
And so I have always argued, as a person who is able to accomplish tasks quicker than the people around me, generally speaking, I've always argued that the standard should be you come in, you have a set of tasks to accomplish, and then you accomplish them and you're free to go. And it doesn't really matter if you spend 8 hours or 1 hour. As long as you get done the tasks that you have to get done, you're good. You earned your money. And obviously there are weaknesses to that kind of a system as well. I think the most glaring weakness being, how do you negotiate what is a reasonable workload expectation? Because clearly the 8-hour model,
Tiala grimaced thoughtfully.
Eliminates some of that negotiation, some of that aspect of it. Because higher performing people will get more done, and that will balance out lower performing people. And so you really, in some ways, you will run into the same kind of a problem with like a task-oriented model, is that if you set up your list of tasks,
Messeth laughed.
to be universally approachable, then you're going to have to go, just like in the 8-hour paradigm, you're going to have to go to the lowest common denominator, and that's what you're going to have to pander to. Now, the reason why that's attractive to somebody who is maybe able to complete tasks more quickly is that pandering to that lowest common denominator directly benefits me. My list of tasks is going to be small and easy to accomplish if we're doing that. But another obvious downside of this approach is that without some kind of external regulation, you will quickly find that employers' expectations balloon out of control to where nobody could complete that number of tasks. Like they'll have utterly ludicrous expectations.
Tiala grimaced again and sat. Messeth wondered if she hurt the princess's feelings with the question.
But so that being said, facing this project with this seemingly insurmountable task, like the task is so big, at least it appears to be so big, that I'm just like looking at it thinking demoralized thoughts, just like this is gonna drag on and on and on, and it's going to suck the life out of me, and I just don't want to do it. I don't want to get into it. It's going to be awful,
she offered after a few moments.
So in that context, something that's enormously beneficial about the standard hourly approach is that if you encounter an insurmountable task like this, really, you just know going in, I'm going to spend 8 hours on this. Whether it can be done in 8 hours or not, we will find out. But the maximum amount of time I'm going to spend on this today is 8 hours. So I'm going to put in my 8 hours. I'm going to do what I can do, and then we'll see where we are at the end of the day. So that model really contextualizes a huge task like this into manageable chunks, manageable expectations. And I think that's part of the reason why it works so well in like a corporate setting is like when I worked, I say like a lot. I think I've pointed this out before. It just was bothering me just now. For instance, when I worked in the office setting, what we were working with was a massive, never-ending pool of data, and intentionally, like it had to
Tiala
be.
sighed.
It had to be a massive, never-ending set of data because we were constantly monitoring our clients' energy usage. They use more energy every day, so there is a perpetual stream of data coming in. And so there really isn't a way. I mean, there is a way, but it's really kind of pointless to try to break this down into task expectations. I mean, I guess not pointless. Like I can, even sitting now, remembering the work, like I could think of ways to do it, right? Like you could say, all right, your task today is I need the data from this date to this date for this set of clients scrubbed and prepped, right, for reporting. So you do that work today. We're going to have somebody build the reports tomorrow. So that's your task today. What you get paid for today is to make sure all of this data is scrubbed and ready. You do that, you're done. You can go home. Or just like, we have these 5 reports that need to come out. We figure it's reasonable to expect you to do 3 of the reports, so those are your tasks today.
Messeth was taken aback by the offer. According to Tiala, only the king himself had officially seen the book. Tiala and Jaltazhetebek both looked at it, though without the king's permission. She suddenly wondered if it would be wise to look at something the king kept so carefully hidden.
And I think that's not too bad. I think on first brush, a manager might look at that and be like, okay, so the expectation is not that I'm going to try to help my my direct reports, I guess, not employees. I'm not going to try to help my direct reports succeed. That's not what I'm going to spend my time doing. What I'm going to spend my time doing is finding out from the person above me what they need to have accomplished, and then I'm going to spend my time divvying that up into tasks for the people below me, so they don't even they don't have to think about what they could get done. They just do whatever I tell them, and then the onus is on me. Like if there's an employee who's being underutilized, then it becomes my fault.
Messeth replied hesitantly. Tiala looked at her as if weighing the gravity of the situation.
And while I might think that would be a good structure overall, it does add like a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility to supervisor and manager. Wow. Position whatever. It adds a lot of pressure to the chain of command. And I think, in my experience already, I would say the people up the chain of command really had no idea what they were doing, generally speaking. Some of them had a better idea than others, or some of them had like a particular goal in mind.
Messeth looked at Tiala quizzically.
But as a whole, none of them were really very good at managing people. Managers and supervisors, in my experience, are just regular employees reporting the same as every other employee in the company, just with a different set of tasks. but they're not really managing anybody. They're not really helping anybody. They're just they're attending to a different set of tasks than whoever their manager is. They're helping their manager accomplish a set of tasks that their manager can't get through. But what they're not doing is managing the people underneath them or helping them to succeed at making the company do well. Tiala laughed. Messeth nodded, and they walked back to the castle. And that's really that's a top-down approach. But even as I say it, I think that's not so bad, right? Like, let's say a company has one person who's setting the vision, setting the direction for the company. They have an idea of what their company does, because I think in the classical example, they would be the person who founded the company, although that's not the case. But they have an idea of what this organization is about and what its goals are. What its services that it's providing, or what new technology it's championing, or whatever the company is doing. The person over everybody, over the organization as a whole, I think it's reasonable to expect that they're going to have some kind of vision, some kind of mission that they're on, that they're trying to accomplish. That's the way they're going to think about the organization. Like, this group of people is working to accomplish this goal. I think you're in a bad way if the person leading your group has no idea what you're doing. If they're like, I don't know, I think we're doing a little bit of this, I'm not sure. If the person leading your group, if their best answer to the question of what is this group about is, we make money, there was no money, and then we did things, and now there's money. If that's their version of what your group is about, I think you're in a bad place. I do. I think your company is in bad shape. I think you don't really have a future. I think whatever it is that you think your company does, it doesn't really do. Okay, so this is the error you get sometimes when you try to do a silence. And I'm not really sure what causes it, but the only way around it that I've found is to reselect and try again. Sometimes that will work, like Batman's first try, Lego Batman's first try. Sometimes it won't work. Sometimes, well, I guess more accurately, sometimes it is like Lego Batman's first try, where you just keep doing it over and over again. Yeah, it was a rough reference. Sorry. Poor execution on my part. Anyway, yeah, I think if the person at the head of your organization, they're the clearest answer they can give about what your organization is about, what what everybody is working toward. If the clearest answer they can give is, to make money, to generate profit, then I think you're doomed. I think you have two choices. Either get a new leader or die. And maybe ride the ship down, I guess. Milk it for all the money that it's worth, but don't be surprised when it sinks. Because to make money is not it's not useful. You're not really providing anything to anybody. So your source of money, which is going to be other people, is going to dry up pretty quickly. And some organizations can weather this to some degree. If they're providing something that is perceived as somewhat essential, like they actually have a product that they're delivering that people rely on, then I guess in that instance, you could, to some degree, have a leader who is clueless. Because at the end of the day, your organization is still producing a thing that people care about. But that leeway goes away very quickly in a service-based organization. You know, like the one that I worked for, the organization that I worked for, the service that they were providing, I think for me, the most effective way it was explained to me was in the sales pitch that they would, I don't know if this is still how they go about it, but this is what they would tell clients at some point. They would say, hey, look, for every dollar that you spend with us, we're going to save you at least $2. So that's an effective pitch, right? Like, you're going to pay us to monitor your energy usage. And, we're going to charge X number of dollars to do it because we have to employ a couple thousand people to keep track of everything that's going on, and clean the data, make sure that the data is generating a useful picture of what you're doing, and then use our, proprietary techniques to make recommendations that you then could apply. They're not esoteric recommendations that don't really mean anything to you. They are recommendations that you could take and immediately apply to your daily practice, and you're going to see savings. If you do take those recommendations, you're going to see savings to an extent that it will more than pay for us. Like, you're going to have a line item on your budget, which is paying for us, and then on your budget, you're going to see your costs go down to such a large degree that it will more than offset the cost of paying us to do this. And I think that's a good sales pitch, and that was a good goal for us to aim at. When we were analyzing customer data, there may be 1,000 different things that we could look at that the customer could do to reduce their energy usage, right? Because I think a part of the company identity then that flowed out of this goal was to become a quote-unquote green company and to promote sustainability. So there may be 1,000 different things you can do to make your company more sustainable, to make it use less input in order to generate its output. But the organization that I worked for had a specific subset of those things that it was really looking for, because it had identified that subset as the most profitable, the easiest wins, the lowest hanging fruit.
Tiala laughed. Messeth nodded, and they walked back to the castle. Originally, their intent was to see Jaltazetabec for more training, but this seemed more important now. Messeth was surprised the princess trusted her this much. Seeing the mysterious book was obviously a significant honor. She had plenty of time to contemplate this privilege as they slipped quietly through the hallways of the castle, working their way into portions Messeth had never seen. Tiala knew where to go, and deftly kept hidden from view as nobles and servants scurried about. Deeper into the castle, this became less important, as less people worked there. Occasionally, the princess would duck into side rooms, asking Messeth to wait until she reappeared holding keys for locked doors ahead. While passing the throne room, Messeth slowed and tried to catch a glimpse of the massive hall, but Tiala pulled her quickly past. She motioned to be very quiet. They padded down a hallway running the length of the throne room until it ended in a wide sitting area. Tiala unlocked a door at the back of this chamber, led them through another room, and then unlocked another door. This she closed silently behind them, before leading onward through a maze of locked doors and closets. Finally, she opened one last door to a dead-end storage room lined with shelves. Their eyes adjusted slowly to the dark before Tiala could light one of the torches hanging next to the entrance. Messeth gasped in the flaring light as she caught sight of glimmering armor, weaponry, jewels, and gold. Tiala smiled slyly at Messeth's reaction before walking through the room.
That was a long one. So the organization that I worked for, what they were selling, what they labeled as expertise, really could be summed up as, we know what is going to maximize your savings. We know the easiest things that you can do to correct any problems that you have. And that was true. Like, that was not a lie. They weren't blowing smoke. They really did have a few different things that they knew to look at that were going to provide immediate,
she whispered,
benefit to any client that they were working with. And, not all of those things would work for all the clients. And that just kind of depended on what kind of a client you're looking at, as far as what you could expect their needs to be. So I would call that was like that was like 1, 2, that was a service industry. I think we're providing a service to our clients. We're not providing, some kind of goods. So in some ways that makes us more universally applicable. Like, we can serve more clients doing what we're doing, as long as we can find common denominators between the clients themselves.
Gap between the
Like, what do I mean by a common denominator? Okay, McDonald's and Starbucks are different businesses. One is a food. They serve, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The other one is primarily a drink vendor. They serve coffee. But there's a lot of common denominator between those two businesses. Like, they own buildings. They have lights. They have heating bills. They have cooling bills. They use electricity. And then that is also going to be a common denominator with, like FedEx. They ship packages, but they also use electricity and own buildings and need heating and cooling. So really, any business that you could think of that has a physical location somewhere could benefit from our service, right? And depending on how reliant on their physical locations they are, could determine how much benefit they're going to get from our services.
Back into place and moved to the other side of the.
So when I worked with that company, like, the business model was anybody who owns property anywhere or who uses energy anywhere can benefit from our services. Period. So that's our market. And that's a pretty big market, right? But if the person leading the company has no vision at all for what we're doing, if their version of what we're doing is, yeah, you guys make money, you you offer services, I guess, to clients, and then the clients pay. And that's really what's important, is that the clients pay. So offer services, offer more services, offer as many services as they're willing to pay for, get them to pay, because that's what we do. We get people to pay us. Like, if that's the vision for the company's going to die. Because the vision is going to dictate a lot of the behavior of the company. Like, if our goal is to just get more services out there, do more services, and get the client to pay more, then our focus is not on doing the services well or anticipating our clients' needs. Our focus is on just getting them to sign up for services. And really what that opens the door to is a lot of corporate speak and smoke blowing, essentially a lot of lying. It creates a situation where you as an employee, if one of the customers asks you, hey, I've heard you have a service that does this, do you think that would be a good service for us? Which is a common question to be asked. So if somebody asks you that question, it removes any leeway for you to say, you know what, that service really isn't for you. That service is really aimed at companies that are doing this, and you're not doing that. So I think that service could benefit you, yes, but it isn't really for you. It's not designed for you, and I think the amount of benefit you're going to get from it is probably not going to offset the cost of the service, right? Now I'm going to talk about some of the services in like really vague terms, because I know some like proprietary things about the company that I used to work for. I know some of the tricks of the trade, or however you want to say it. And I think, it would be really bad for me to share any of those secrets. So I'm not even going to talk about the services themselves. That's why I'm being vague. But in any case, you now, as an employee, you're put in this situation where you're no longer allowed to tell a client, yeah, that service isn't for you. It wasn't designed for you. And it's not really going to benefit you. You can't do that anymore, because the vision for the company is sell more service, get more money. So now the position you're put in is, anytime a client says something like, hey, I heard you have this service, do you think that would be a good service for me? Your answer always has to be yes. Yes, that would be a good service. That's a solid service, seen a lot of benefit from it. We have clients who have, tripled their savings over the cost of acquiring this service. So it's a really excellent service. You should definitely sign up for it.
Tiala stopped in the back corner. She rolled a heavy barrel aside to reveal a small gap between the corner shelf and the floor. Within this recess was a lever Tiala pulled up with a creak. Nothing in the room appeared to change, but she pushed the barrel back into place and moved to the other side of the rear wall. There was another barrel to move there, behind which was the top of a gate hidden by a gap in the floor. Tiala pushed it open and stepped down through, beckoning for Messeth to follow. The gate led, at last, to a small room piled high with various artifacts. To Messeth's surprise, some of it was filled with papers and scrolls arranged neatly along the walls. An imposing suit of armor filled the center of the room, and behind it were stacks of crates. Tiala hung the torch and went straight to one of the boxes. She gingerly lifted out the book they had come to see. Messeth moved closer to see this mystery. Its cover was plain and made of smooth leather, but it did not look old.
Oops. So I left that in because I wasn't sure what that was. I've come into some of these files and I've found, within the file itself, there's a sentence that's cut off, or a word that's cut off at the end, where I made a mistake and I lost part of the recording. So I want to make sure it wasn't that. So in that circumstance, it's like you're not exactly lying to the client, right? Like, it is a good service. It has created this benefit. None of these things that you're telling the client are false. The only thing you're telling the client that is false is that you think they should buy this service, because you don't think they should buy this service. In fact, you know they shouldn't. You know that it's going to be terrible for them. And you also know that it's going to be a matter of months or years before they realize how terrible it is. They're going to think they're getting great benefit, and it may even be obfuscated by the other services that you're providing. So they won't even see how poor of an investment this was. And this becomes the way that your company wants to do business. And I think in a lot of ways that became the way that the company I was working for wanted to do business, because there were times when their entire vision was sell more, make more money. You know, and having experienced that firsthand, I think that it absolutely leads to the company dying. It dies in two main ways, probably more than two ways. But two main ways that I could think of. Number one, it demoralizes the people doing the work. Like, there's that like again. I would be doing work for clients that I knew was pointless. Like, this is going to accomplish basically nothing for the client. There's no reason for us to be doing this. And part of the demoralization is that you quickly realize it doesn't matter if you do a good job or not. You know, if I scrub this data very accurately so that when we build a report, it says exactly what it should say. It gives a very clear picture, a very clear and accurate picture of what's going on to the client, so that they can take that information and make the best possible decision with it. The impact that all of that effort is going to have is nothing. So if I give them a bunch of funky data that gives them the wrong impression and motivates them to make a very poor decision that doesn't benefit them in any way, functionally, the difference between those two things is nothing. It's neither going to save nor cost the client anything. It literally doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if this is good or bad, because the whole effort has no benefit to this client. Like, there's no reason for them to be paying for this. This is not going to help them in any way. So it doesn't matter if I do a good job or if I do a bad job. It means nothing. I was never going to save them money, and I was never going to cost them money. And this issue really isn't an issue for them. So them paying us to monitor it, there's no reason for it. There's no possibility of them gaining any benefit from this. There was a third surrounding. So at that point, I think, you know, as a reasonable employee, you start to think, well, I'm not gonna. Why would I waste 4 hours of the company's time, you know, doing this report correctly, when I could put 5 minutes into it and, you know, it would have the same impact. And the only answer to that is because I have integrity. Because it's a matter of my integrity. Because I say I'm going to do it right, therefore I'm going to do it right. And that's great. You will get fired for that. I did get fired for that, as a matter of fact. Because if you intentionally slow yourself down while everybody else around you is not, Tiala pointed out the smaller section first, then what your employer is going to do in the end is they're going to pull you aside and say, hey, it's taking you 4 hours to do what it takes everybody else 5 minutes to do. Why? And you know what the company does not care about? Is that you're doing it right. because they're going to say the same thing that I just said. They're going to say this doesn't affect our client at all. There's no benefit to you doing it right. So don't. Stop doing it right. Just do it and get it done. And where's your integrity then? Because now you're in a position where you need to do it poorly because you agreed with your employer that you were going to do the work as it's assigned to you. Messeth asked as they carefully turned pages in the fragile manuscript. So you've now been put in a position where you are damaging your integrity by doing it poorly, or you're damaging your integrity by doing it well. You absolutely are damaging your integrity, and more importantly, you're damaging it before your employer, because they have just told you the amount of effort that they want you to put into it. They have just told you, I do not want you to invest all this time into quote unquote doing it right, because you know and I know, although really I think from the employer's perspective it's like, because I know it has no benefit and apparently you're too stupid to figure that out, which isn't a good look for you as an employee either, Tiala admitted. So, but at the point where they tell you it has no benefit, now everybody knows, including you. Everybody involved knows that this has no benefit. There's no more mystery to be had. And so there's no reason for you to be spending time on it. Stop it. So if you went into this feeling like, well, I don't want to sacrifice my integrity for the sake of getting this done faster, even though that would make me look better, you've now created a situation where you are going to have to go against the standard that you chose to stand on. And that's a bad place to be. It's a bad place to be. It's not going to feel good for you. That is also going to be demoralizing for you. And all of this stems from not your fault. It's not your fault as an employee that the person leading the company feels this way. You stepped back. Okay, I think the k sound is right there. Yeah. But it is affecting you. You know, you're not responsible for setting the vision for the company, but it is affecting you. And the more that happens, the worse off the company is going to be. The more that happens, the more the company is putting its employees in this impossible conundrum of they have to decide, am I going to take the low integrity approach because that's going to make me look better to my boss? Or am I going to take the high integrity approach because that's what's right and I feel safe leaning on doing things the right way every time? And because of this, was okay, that's at the start of a breath. And the standard of we just need to make more money, I forget my train of thought, it always results in this. It always results in demoralizing your employees and putting them in morally compromised positions. That's just how it works. Because you don't have a useful vision for your company anymore. Your company is no longer focused on doing something, you know, to or for the world around them. They're now focused on doing something to or for themselves. And anytime a vision turns inward like that, anytime the vision is just all about maximizing my benefit for me, for my needs or for my desires, everything becomes very unhealthy. A deep voice from behind them startled the girls. Tiala leapt up with a strangled shriek, dropping the ancient book clumsily as she stepped back. Messeth shuddered and twisted her head sharply but did not rise. Her mind was instantly filled with the implications of where she was. She had no idea who the intruder was, but any person of authority in the Jaltakish kingdom
would doubtless be displeased to find a mage rifling through the king's most private possessions. She caught herself in the midst of her surprise and held her head down in a bowed position, hands outstretched non-threateningly.
So that's the first way. Demoralizing your workforce is the first way it kills your company, and then the second way it kills the company is you start a countdown timer. It's only a matter of time before your customers realize you're just using them for money. You're not actually doing anything helpful for them. You're deceiving them in a lot of cases. This does not generate goodwill. Doesn't make your company look good, and word is going to get around. Companies, CEOs, owners, whatever, they're going to share their experiences. And people are going to know that the goal of your company is to bilk dollars out of other companies, and that's it. And that will be the reputation that you have. And the reputation might go even further than that.
Himself,
as it did with the company that I worked for, it went from, okay, so your goal is to just get as much money out of us as possible, to your services aren't even that good. Your competitors have a better service. They do a better job than you do. And regardless of whether or not that's true, that will absolutely happen. You will have people leveraging that accusation against your organization. And they will feel great about doing that, even if it's a lie, because you lied to them first. And so I think the majority of people are going to look at that and they're going to go, yeah, it's fine. It's fine for me to undercut these lying jerks.
Tiala stammered, suddenly rushing to bow next to Meseth. Discovering it to be King Salonum himself intensified Meseth's fears. Her body shook as she considered the dire consequences of her actions. The king was quiet.
Okay, so we're about halfway through chapter 12. Maybe not even. So I'm going to keep working on this for the rest of the day, but it's been a little over an hour, and I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to do some other things, and then we'll see. We'll see how it is for